Hello, and welcome back to Discomfort Films. Thank you once again for joining me for my second annual horror ranking video. I'm gonna be honest, it's probably gonna be the last one, because this is a lot of fucking work. I'll probably just do like a top 10 or a top 20 list next year or something. So, 2025, on a personal level, for me, and I think a lot of other people, dog shit. But when it comes to the horror movies that were released this year, I think it was fucking great. But just some quick housekeeping beforehand, this will be completely spoiler-free, just like some quick thoughts on each of the movies mentioned. I'm going to include a timestamp in either like the description or the pinned comment, so you can check that out if there's a specific one you're looking for. And also, not all of these are strictly horror films. There's some thrillers and other like kind of weird or dark genre films on here. It's a very like vibes-based list. Also, I'm getting over a cold while I'm recording this part, so sorry if my voice sounds bad. I think it's appropriate that I'm going to be talking about the shitty movies first while I'm sick, so without further ado, I'm just gonna get right into it. Speaking of shit, at the very bottom of the heap this year is War of the Worlds, which I think will be a surprise to no one. I watched this way after it was trending. I was just like looking for shitty movies to kind of round out the list a little more, and I was like, you know, War of the Worlds is kind of horror adjacent. I remember watching the Spielberg version when I was growing up, and that scared the shit out of me, so... And, like, I saw the memes, but I was not prepared for how bad this movie was. I was at least hoping it would be, like, so bad it's good. Like, there's an exception to every rule, but generally I think that for a movie to be so bad it's good, there has to be, like, some earnestness or effort put into it. But this just feels like some shit they threw together during lockdowns as an excuse for, like, product placement. Ice Cube's performance is laughably bad. I think that's where, like, a lot of the so bad it's good aspects come from. It's just his very, like, flat reactions to what should be this horrific, like, unprecedented event in human history, and it's just like somebody reacting to like a football game or something. I've seen videos of dudes just like freaking the fuck out and like punching the TV in response to like sports games, so even that is kind of like an overstatement. And again, it is so cheaply and lazily put together. It is very reliant on both stock footage and terrible CGI that wouldn't be out of place in like one of those early 2000s Asylum knockoff movies. So I know some people enjoyed this as like a so bad it's good movie, but I just felt frustrated that I even wasted time watching it. And the next one up is Hell House LLC Lineage. I would consider myself a casual fan of this series. The first one, it's not an amazing movie, but I think it's pretty, like, scary, and it has, like, a nice vibe to it. Like, it's one of those movies I always put on during Halloween. Fourth one, the prequel, the one that just came out a couple of years ago, I think, that one was surprisingly good. I actually really enjoyed that. I would put it about, like, on par with the first movie. But Lineage is shockingly bad. First of all, I think it was a huge mistake to switch from the found footage mockumentary style of the rest of the series into like a conventional filmmaking style for this, because it just loses like a lot of the personality these previous movies had, and I think that style works well with a low budget. Like, this genuinely felt like a shitty student film at times. Like, I was genuinely surprised that it was the same director as all the rest of the films. The acting and the dialogue is awful. It's so weirdly paced, like every shot just drags on. And not in a way that's like building suspense or tension, it's just like, it's just awkward. It's like they just didn't know when to like cut when they were editing it. And this movie doesn't end so much as it just stops. I was like so checked out of this movie, like for 99% of it. I was just sitting there waiting for it to end, and then once it finally ends and the credits come up, I was just like, huh? Next is I Know What You Did Last Summer. Honestly, like, I'm not the biggest fan of this series, and I didn't really care about the new set of characters introduced in this, so this just didn't really work for me on any level. If you are really into this series, this might do more for you, but it didn't do much for me. As far as like the legacy sequel formula goes, I thought it did a kind of an interesting thing with one of the returning characters that I don't think a lot of these overly reverential like follow-up movies would do, which I won't specify because it's a spoiler, but I like the idea, just not how it was executed. Like, I think it could have been done better. And the dialogue is very like modern and self-aware, and once in a while there would be like a line that would get like a little like chuckle out of me, but for the most part I just found it kind of cringy. And the next is The Strangers Chapter 2. If you watched last year's video, I think Chapter 1 was like the second worst horror movie I saw this year, and this one as you can see, is a mild improvement. Like, the one thing I'll give it is that at least this one isn't just a worse remake of the original film like Chapter 1 was. But this is still not good. Like, I don't want to get your hopes up. Like, it's very predictable and padded out. I remember hearing somewhere that, like, this whole trilogy, including, like, the third film, which is upcoming, was filmed all together over the course of, like, 52 days. Which explains a lot about the quality and the pacing of these movies. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of The Strangers either. Like, I like this Pray at Night, but that's about it. But, this is the one that, like, unmasks them and starts to give them backstories, which really, to me, feels very counter to what makes these characters unsettling to people. They should just call the third movie The Acquaintances. Like, that's the point we're at. Oh, I will say, the highlight of this whole fucking movie was the CGI boar attack. It was just one of those things that came out of nowhere and made me so happy. It's like a black, starless night, and then you see, like, a firework, and it's like, and it's like, wow! And then it fizzles out and it's gone, and then you're just, like, back in the dark again, and, like, that was my experience, like, with the boar scene watching this movie. I'll also say, I think the main actress in this movie, I don't remember her name, but it was the fucking, it was Cheryl Blossom, Queen of the Bees from Riverdale. I think her performance in this is pretty decent. She does what she needs to do. I think she's pretty good at, like, conveying fear. But yeah, Chapter 1 sucked, and this is mostly just more of the same. That being said, I will be there for Chapter 3. I'm a masochist, and I feel like I need to commit at this point. Next up is Wolfman. This was such a disappointment. Like, what a snoozer. I haven't seen Leigh Whannell's The Invisible Man since it came out, but I do remember enjoying it quite a bit. It was well directed, had some good scares, and a good lead performance, and this just feels so uninspired by comparison. It felt like the studio was just like, oh, the Invisible Man movie did really well. What do we got next? Fucking Wolfman, there you go. There were some ideas in this that I liked. Like, I think the way the forest is shot is kind of nice, and I like, there's a scene involving, like, I don't know, like, wolf vision that I thought was kind of interesting. I haven't really seen that in this kind of movie before that I can recall. I didn't like the execution, but I think the concept of, like, the werewolf being, like, a slow, like, gradual body horror transformation is kind of neat. And I also think the idea of using the Wolfman as an allegory for the cycle of trauma passed down from, like, father to son is a good idea. Could be interesting if the script was better and the characters are more developed. As it is, it feels like something that was just tacked on to make a very basic, boring monster movie feel like it's about something. So yeah, that was probably, like, my biggest disappointment this year, as far as what my expectations were going in and what the movie ended up being. So that's too bad. Next is Until Dawn. I've watched some people play this game, but I'm not super familiar with it. It feels like they took some liberties anyway, so I don't know how helpful that would have been. I thought the production design of, like, the creepy house that it takes place in was kind of neat, and it had some campy, self-aware moments that I enjoyed, but overall I was just very, like, disengaged with the story. The scares were very predictable and generic, same with the monsters, which is disappointing because the Wendigos in the original game have, like, this kind of freaky, gangly look to them, and here they just, like, kind of look like generic zombies with sharp teeth. I think a time loop story can be really fun. Happy Death Day and Edge of Tomorrow are really good examples of that. But the way this movie handles that is, like, kind of boring and skips over, like, the fun parts. But there's some stuff they show in a montage, and I'm like, that looks so much cooler than, like, what the actual movie ended up being. Like, it almost kind of feels like it's building up to be a cabin in the woods type thing, then just ends up being, like, very basic and boring, which was quite disappointing. I will say, my favorite part of this whole damn movie was the whole tap water that makes you explode. It's such a stupid-ass plot element, but I couldn't help but love it. Like, every time that happened to somebody, I fucking cackled. Like, that was the best part of the movie for me. Next is The Conjuring Last Rites. For a supposed grand finale, this was very underwhelming. I went in with middle-of-the-road expectations because I wasn't the biggest fan of the third movie. I think the series lost a lot of sauce once James Wan moved on to direct other things. It's a very common, like, through line with all the bad movies I find. It's nothing you haven't seen before, and especially for this series, there's such, like, a lack of cool villains in this. Like, the last ones, they had Annabelle, they had Valak, the nun, and this one just has, like, some lumberjack guy, and a mirror. I thought the mirror was gonna end up being like a portal for the demon to come through, but no, the final boss of this movie is just the fucking mirror. Like, it's so stupid, it's almost funny. Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson are still very charming in the lead roles, and there's some enjoyment to be had just like spending time with these characters. But like the Warren storyline and the storyline of the family that's being haunted, they're so separated for most of the movie, they don't really even like meet each other until the third act, which makes them feel very disconnected, and it's lacking that whole paranormal investigation aspect that I kind of find entertaining about these movies. Next is The Woman in the Yard. This was actually a competently made movie, but it felt like it was really just reheating Hereditary and the Babadook's nachos. I feel like I'm a little bit nicer to this movie than some people because, especially after last year, like, again, if you watched my ranking video the previous year, like, my expectations for Blumhouse are on the floor at this point. And this one, at least, I actually genuinely really liked the cinematography. I loved the way the inside of the house was shot. Especially given that the movie is about depression and like the family is just like stuck in this house the whole time. It really does convey that feeling of just being just like confined and miserable. And also the way it uses shadows and reflections at times. And I remember there being this cool transition that I really liked. It's like a close-up on the inside of the house on this little model of the farmhouse as it was being built. And then like it cuts to like the same angle of like the actual house outside where like the son is confronting the woman in the yard. And I watched that and I was like, oh, that was neat. And it has one of those ambiguous endings, and I really love like an ambiguous, depressing ending when it's done well, but here it just feels very purposefully vague and non-committal. Again, like maybe I'm being a little nicer to this movie, like it's not very good, but I remember when it came out, people were calling it like the worst horror movie of the year, so my expectations were very low. There's nothing here you haven't seen before, there's not a lot of substance to it. There's other films that tell this kind of story a lot better. Next is Megan 2.0. I think it was a fun idea for this to go from a horror movie to an action movie. Again, I just didn't care for the execution for the most part. I like the way they brought back the Megan character and the villain was fun, but overall I just wasn't as into the story this time around. Next is Him. This is another disappointing movie because I think it has a great premise, doing a cult horror movie, but the cult is football. Like, I have never been into sports at all, so like sports culture is like very weird to me as an outsider looking in, and I think a movie that kind of capitalizes on that, especially knowing the kind of shit that gets covered up in these big mainstream sports leagues, like the abuse and the head injuries and stuff like that. I think there is a lot to mine here for a horror movie, but this just feels like very surface level. I think some of the visuals in this movie are really cool, same with like the music and the sound design. Like, it feels more like a weird music video than a movie at times. The visuals and the concept almost reminded me kind of like a football version of this movie called The Neon Demon. I think I would have liked this movie a lot more if it was as crazy as The Neon Demon or had like more left turns in the story, or even if like the main character was more developed, because I actually think both the lead performances in this are really good, especially Marlon Wayans as the cult leader, but the main character, like I said, like the performance is fine, I just didn't think there was much to him. And especially the ending really fell flat for me because the decision the character makes like didn't really have much weight for me because like you don't really know that much about him. You know his basic backstory, but you don't really get a sense of what's going on internally, and I think that was like a big missed opportunity for this movie. Next one up is The Home. This is another very generic horror movie for the most part. It kind of reminded me a lot of A Cure for Wellness and Get Out, except it takes place in a nursing home, and literally every potential trope you can think of about a creepy nursing home is thrown in here. Every horror movie where there's like old people behaving in like creepy or unsettling ways, it happens here. Like, I feel like I'm saying this a lot, but like the concept wasn't too bad, just the execution is very dumb. I also think the lead performance by Pete Davidson is laughably flat. Basically, he's a criminal who has to work in the creepy nursing home as like community service, basically. So it makes sense, at the beginning at least, for him to act like he doesn't give a shit and doesn't want to be there. But like, as the movie goes on, he's bonding with this old lady there, and he gives her a gift, and it's supposed to be this like heartwarming scene, but even in that scene, it looks like he doesn't give a shit. It's also one of those movies that just has to blatantly explain every plot twist and every villain or character motivation to the audience like we're dumb. It's very Netflix second screen type writing. But honestly, the last like 10 or 15 minutes of this movie are so fucking wild that it kind of made me glad I watched it. It's gonna be kind of a weird like old people nursing home metaphor, but if you know somebody who works in like a hospital or like a home or something like that, they'll probably have stories of patients who are just on their deathbed, they could die at any day, and then suddenly, right before they pass on, they get this burst of energy. It's like nothing ever happened and then they're dead. Like, that's basically this movie. It's like generic crap for like 90%, and then the last 10 or 15 minutes, it's like, holy shit, what the fuck is this? Like, it honestly made me glad I watched it. Even though I wouldn't say it's a good movie, I would almost classify it as like so bad it's good. Right, next is Primitive War. I feel like I'm a bit biased here because I love dinosaurs, and this movie feels like some shit I would have rented from the video store when I was 9 years old. I would not call this a good movie per se. It's a very tropey, low-budget Vietnam War movie with dinosaurs in it, and I feel like if you're intrigued by the premise, you might like get a little enjoyment out of it. The characters are all very one-note, and the bad guys in this movie are Russian, of course, and the accents are laughably bad. Like, the main villain literally sounds like he's drunk. For all its faults, though, like, I was very checked out during the dialogue scenes, honestly, but I will say the dinosaur carnage is very fun, especially in comparison to stuff like the Jurassic World franchise, which are so, like, sanitized. It's very fun watching, like, a movie in a theater where dinosaurs just rip people's guts out and decapitate people, and I actually think most of the dinosaur models look pretty good. The CGI ranges from serviceable for a low-budget movie. The raptors and the T-Rexes, I think, look pretty good, to like sci-fi original quality. And it's another one where like the climax is so over the top and batshit. I was just like having the time of my life for like 10 minutes out of this like 90-minute movie. So I don't want to hype this up too much because like I said, there were long moments where I checked out, but when I was having fun, I was having fun. Next up is Match. I've said before on this channel, I like Tubi a lot, but I've never really checked out their original stuff, but I heard people online discussing this movie, so I thought I'd check it out. And I thought it was pretty decent. Like, it wasn't a great movie, it is, like, very reminiscent of movies like Barbarian and Fresh. But I kind of have a soft spot for sleazy, gross horror movies where all the characters are stupid as fuck, so I did have, like, a decent time with this. I think the special effects are pretty decent, there's some good gross-out moments, and it's not an awards-worthy performance, but I love the actress playing the mom. Like, the shit she says and does in this was cracking me up. And next is Shelby Oaks. I think the direction and the lead performance do a lot to elevate this movie because the script was very lackluster to me. It starts off very promising. Like I said, I love a good horror mockumentary, so I was really into the first part of this movie. There's a montage where it's like talking about like the fictional case that kickstarts the movie, and they have like different horror YouTubers. I watch all those people, so it was very interesting to like see them on a theater screen. And I thought that and the original video crew that went missing being YouTubers was kind of an interesting way to incorporate the YouTube platform into the movie, which is interesting, especially given the director Chris Stuckman's background as a film YouTuber. So while the first part of that movie was pretty intriguing, I think it like kind of gradually descends after that point. I think it's pretty well directed for a first feature, and the main performance was really good. Like, even though the circumstances were kind of silly, I thought the actress was so good at portraying the emotions of the character that I was still invested. But it's one of those things that really wears its influences on its sleeve, and that's not always a bad thing. But here I feel it's kind of using them as a crutch. Like, it's not always a good thing to constantly remind your audience of better movies. And the ending is very abrupt, especially, I don't want to spoil it, but there's a major character death that's so abrupt and over the top, and like the rest of the movie isn't like that at all, and it was just so much all at once that I honestly found it kind of comical. It was just a weird note to end on. And next is Good Boy. I feel like such a Grinch when it comes to this movie because I did think it was decent, but that it also didn't have much to offer outside the gimmick. I think telling a conventional horror movie through the perspective of a pet dog is a really cool idea, and I think it's executed all right here. I really like the camera work that emphasizes the dog's point of view, like really like low angles looking up, and I also especially like that you don't see like a lot of human faces in this. There are a few really neat shots I like where the owner is kind of like lit from behind, so his face is kind of obscured in shadow, and I thought that was really eerie to look at. Like, if nothing else, it's worth watching for the little behind the scenes, either during or after the credits, I don't remember. That was super adorable. I saw this in a theater and literally everyone stayed to watch that. And I have a lot of respect for the filmmaker too. I imagine working with trained animals is difficult enough. I can't imagine working with a pet who isn't used to being on a film set or trained to do that kind of thing. So I like that a passion project got this kind of platform and support, even if I was kind of lukewarm on it. Right next is Queens of the Dead. If you're intrigued by the premise of drag queens versus zombies, I think you'll find some enjoyment in this. The humor was kind of hit and miss for me, it's just like not my style. I really liked the cast, and the heartwarming character moments worked really well for me. This was actually directed by Tina Romero, daughter of George A. Romero, and there are a lot of nods to his work here, but this is definitely its own thing, which is very exciting to see. Next is Strange Harvest. I thought this was okay. I think it really nailed the vibe of like a kind of a trashy late night true crime documentary or some shit you would see on Netflix. Some of the dialogue from the cops during the talking head bits are a bit corny, but like I said, that can be true to life for these kind of things as well, so I wouldn't necessarily hold that against it. And also, this is the same director as Grave Encounters, which also had a lot of comedy, so it wouldn't surprise me if that was intentional. Some of the kills are pretty gnarly too. Like I said, it's a faux documentary, so you don't actually see them, but the crime scene photos and the descriptions of them can be pretty disturbing. It's a lot of build-up, and I thought the payoff was a bit underwhelming. But if you enjoy stuff like Grave Encounters or horror mockumentaries, then I think it's going to be worth watching. Next is The Shrouds. I'm kind of mixed on this. I didn't love it, but I thought it had some really interesting ideas, and I'm glad that I saw it. It definitely doesn't have a conventional plot. It's more of like a stream of consciousness meditation on grief in like the technical age, kind of being told through this story about like the graveyard shrouds. And I think having Diane Kruger play 3 different roles, like the dead wife, the partner, and the AI assistant, was a really fascinating choice. And next is Keeper. This was alright. I didn't enjoy it as much as Oz Perkins' previous 2 movies. I feel like this was like a pretty basic artsy folk horror script that was really elevated by the visual direction and the lead performance. Yeah, my favorite thing about this movie were the visuals. I really like the way it was shot. It's like one of those movies that takes place in like an isolated cabin in the woods, and usually with those kinds of stories, like the emphasis is on like the claustrophobia, like the woods closing in, like the walls closing in, but here, like, it's very open, there's a lot of windows, and it almost like creates this weird feeling of just being like left exposed and like someone or something's looking in on you. I thought that was really interesting. And also there's some like demon creature designs in this that are really sick. My biggest issue was with the movie is that the first 2/3 are very slow, and then in the last act there's this huge exposition dump. And I think I would have preferred if more was left ambiguous and like some of these reveals were more spaced out throughout the movie. Next is Black Phone 2. This isn't a bad movie by any means. I enjoyed it for the most part, but as a sequel, I feel like it didn't do a lot to justify its existence, if that made any sense. Like, I enjoyed it as I was watching it, but when I was reflecting on it, I just, like, kind of realized how uneventful the movie was. It's pretty slow-paced, and not a lot of consequence actually happens. I think it's fun that they did, like, a Freddy Krueger thing with the villain from the last movie, coming back as a vengeful spirit, but there was a lot of wasted potential here. My favorite thing about the movie is the setting. It's this, kids' camp in the middle of a blizzard, it's snowed in, and the only people there are, like, the 3 main characters and like a handful of staff. And I also like that they reuse the Super 8 aesthetic here for the dream sequences, speaking of the Freddy Krueger thing. But I think if it was a bit of a waste to kind of set up this slasher movie premise and then have like such a low to non-existent body count. Like, they introduce all these kind of superfluous characters. Like, I actually liked the characters in this movie, but there are so many fake outs where you think somebody's gonna die and it's like, oh shit, and it's like they save them just in time every single time, and it's like, okay, this almost feels like something for kids at this point. So yeah, I didn't dislike this. I think it was competently made in some respects, but it was just kind of dull. Next is the Silent Night, Deadly Night remake. I was pleasantly surprised by this. I saw the trailer in front of a different movie and it made it look like a very beat-for-beat remake of the original film, but it wasn't that at all. Like, it definitely has like a lot of elements in common, but it's one of those things where they kind of take the story in a different direction and add all these new elements to it, and I thought that was really cool. It was kind of funny that this stars the same actor as Corey in Halloween Ends, and the premise is very similar. However, I think this movie does it a lot better. If you're one of those people who watched Halloween Ends and thought the concept of, like, Michael kind of possessing Corey was kind of interesting, but you would rather see it in something that isn't bogged down with the baggage of being a Halloween Legacy sequel, I would definitely recommend this. It wasn't as gory as I was expecting it to be. There were, like, a few good kills in here, but at times it does feel a bit held back by its budget. There's this scene where I feel like it was trying to be this movie's equivalent of, like, the church scene in Kingsman. Like, at the beginning I was pumped for it, but then, like, the payoff was a bit underwhelming for me. And it's obviously not, like, a romance first and foremost, but the two leads had great chemistry and I liked watching them together. Next is The Toxic Avenger. This is another decent reboot, and again, I like that it was a different story and not just a retread of the original. And I like this movie's version of Toxie too. It was Peter Dinklage doing the voice, but Luisa Guerrero in the costume, I think, after the transformation occurs, and I thought they both did really well. There's some good gore here too, like there's a little much CGI at points, but it didn't bother me for the most part, except for this one kill where I was like, oh, that looks pretty bad. And yeah, not all of the jokes landed for me, but some really did, and there's a lot of trauma Easter eggs here too, so I would definitely recommend it. Next is Dead Lover. I saw this at VIFF back in October or November, and I'm not sure, I haven't kept up with when it's getting a wider release or if it is, but it's one of those things I went into just based on the synopsis, and I was fairly entertained by it. It is extremely low budget, and it definitely has the energy of like some weird small community theater project, which added a lot of charm for me. Like, this set is just like some like kind of random props in a black void, and there's the same handful of actors playing all these different characters. I thought that was pretty funny. Like, to be fair, I have kind of a juvenile sense of humor sometimes, but I found it pretty funny, although I think some of the jokes like went on for too long. It felt like they were just trying to pad out the runtime once in a while. Next is Presence. This is another one I saw at VIFF the previous year, like a couple months before it came out, and walking out of it, I was like, you know, that was interesting, but the general audience is gonna absolutely hate it, and a couple months later, I was right. I feel like a lot of it is mismarketing. It was marketed as like a straightforward horror movie, but I found it to be more of a family drama with a supernatural twist. And for what it was, like I said, I thought it was interesting. I was kind of going back and forth on it during the runtime because like I wasn't really sure where it was going, but I can't talk about it without spoiling it, obviously, but it's one of those movies that's really made by the ending. It's one of those things where, like, once the identity of the presence is revealed, it just, like, recontextualizes the entire movie. So yeah, like I said, while I was going back and forth on it, it definitely ended on a high note. And if you go into it knowing what to expect, I think you'll be more open-minded to what it has to offer. Next is Companion. This was a pretty fun movie. I think it has a really cool premise, and the way, like, the initial twist is revealed is really neat. But I thought the lead performance was very strong. I enjoyed the character and, like, watching her, like, use her unique abilities to kind of fuck with people and find a way out of her situation. I like that it uses it to explore dating and relationship dynamics where, like, you don't really see the other person as a person, you just see them as an object. And especially, like, the gender dynamics at play there. I think it could have been maybe a little more in-depth or cutting. Not drastically, but it did start to lose me a little bit in the third act too, but overall it's a fun movie. Next is Clown in a Cornfield. This is very much a corny teen slasher movie, but it knows what it is and it has fun with it, even though it's a bit cliched. I like the killer, and I thought the father-daughter story at the center of the movie was well done. Next is Bone Lake. This movie opens with a guy getting shot in the balls by an arrow. I have to enjoy it at least a little bit. The plot twists are very easy to predict if you've seen movies like this before, but I was still entertained. And I really liked the way this movie was shot too. There's some really fun cinematography, and I really loved the use of primary colors throughout the movie. It almost reminded me a bit of a giallo at points. It does feel a bit too tame sometimes though, like it's obviously it's calling to mind like sexy, trashy slasher movies, and although it definitely has moments, especially like I said, the arrow through the ball scene at the end and the whole climax, I think it could have went like a little bit more over the top with those two elements. Next is Meat Kills. If you enjoy those 2000s torture, New French Extremity type movies, like Hostel, Inside, High Tension, shit like that, I think this is going to scratch that itch. It definitely did for me. It's an old school, mean-spirited, home invasion, revenge, torture movie. It won't be for everyone, like there's literally no likable characters in this, but if you enjoy those types of movies, I would definitely recommend it. The practical gore effects look great, and I think it makes really good use of its slaughterhouse setting. Next, Heart Eyes. Motherfucker. Every time I see the title of that movie, The Vine comes to mind. I was very pleasantly surprised by this. It's an entertaining combination of both a rom-com and a slasher, which has been done before, but I thought it blended those two things really well. And I like how much it plays up the rom-com tropes as well as the slasher tropes. Like, you got the lead character having this awkward meetup with a guy, and then it turns out, oh no, he's her new coworker, boss, or whatever. You got, like, the sassy best friend, you got the rushing to the airport apology. And I really enjoyed the two leads, and I thought they had good chemistry with each other. I really enjoyed their banter, which sold the rom-com parts of the movie more as well. There's some decent kills and chase scenes, but overall it's a pretty, like, lighthearted, humorous movie, and I enjoyed the humor for the most part, so that worked for me. It definitely does not dethrone My Bloody Valentine as the best Valentine's Day themed slasher movie, but I had fun with this, and I can see myself throwing it on again. Next, Dust Bunny. I love that this is an original horror film aimed at older kids. You don't really see that a lot nowadays outside of franchise stuff like Five Nights at Freddy's and the like. It reminds me a lot of those dark, off-kilter kids movies I grew up watching where it's like, yeah, there's no blood, but like the monster is actually killing these people. Like, it is a threat. And on top of that, it's an amazing looking movie. It has this like very colorful, whimsical production design. My biggest issue with it is that the script is kind of uneven and repetitive at points, but like just when it would like kind of start to lose me a little bit, it would do something like funny or cool or charming, and then it would bring me back. Next, Drop. This is definitely like one of those fun, silly popcorn thrillers, and I had a great time with it. There's some really cool editing tricks and cinematography at points, and I really like how most of the movie is just confined to the restaurant. I am very socially anxious, so the thought of someone manipulating me and coercing me into doing stupid shit in public is honestly a nightmare. And once they reveal who the villain actually is, the performance is so hammy, and I love that kind of shit. Next is VHS Halloween. This is another really solid entry in the series. As a whole, I think I would consider it like about on par with VHS Beyond, and I enjoy that one quite a bit. And surprise, surprise, I'm a Halloween girly, so I like Halloween-themed shit. So I did write some quick thoughts on each of the shorts. Diet Phantasma. I've said it before, the wraparound segment is usually like the weakest parts of these movies, but I actually enjoyed this one. Like, it is kind of repetitive, but I really enjoyed the dry humor and the special effects and just seeing the sheer number of ways they can get a pop can to kill somebody. And, Coochie Coochie Coo. This one was alright. It kind of felt more like a haunted house walkthrough than a short horror film. But I thought it was a decent combination of like silly moments and spooky moments you would expect from this kind of series. Ut Supra Sic Infra. This one was pretty decent. I thought the premise and the setting was really cool, and there's this like crazy ass shot at the climax I thought was really well executed. It's just really straightforward and there wasn't really any twists. Fun size, a lot of people hate this one, but I honestly liked how unserious it was. Like, when it first started, like, with the acting and the dialogue, I was like, oh shit, this is gonna be a bad one. But, like, as it kept going, it kind of won me over, and it kind of became part of the humor for me. Kid Print, this is definitely, like, kind of the odd one out here. It's very, like, dark and mean-spirited with little to no comic relief, which kind of calls to mind, like, some of the first couple entries in the series, which I really liked. I thought the premise was interesting, and I really liked the dark, uncomfortable tone. Then the last one is Home Haunt. This is my favorite. Again, it has a really great premise, like this homemade haunted house attraction that comes to life and actually starts killing people. And there's this really great cameo from Rick Baker, who, if you don't know, is this very prolific special effects artist. He worked on stuff like American Werewolf in London, as this curmudgeonly neighbor who's like, this all looks like shit, this looks so fake. And just the visual of, like, the props, like, the stereotypical green witch, like, and these, like, shitty little, white sheet goats, like, coming to life and fucking people up is just hysterical to me. So yeah, VHS Halloween, a very strong entry in the series, like, it has its issues, all of these movies do, for better or for worse. But I was entertained. Next is Deathstalker. This was a fun movie full of great practical effects and creatures, which is what I expect from Steven Kostanski. I haven't seen all of his stuff, but what I've seen I really enjoyed. I loved the creatures and the gore. The fight scenes kind of felt like video game boss battles, and it's a surprisingly like kind of lighthearted and wholesome movie for how much gore and freaky monsters are in it. And the soundtrack rips. Next is Dangerous Animals. This is a really fun combination of both a serial killer movie and a shark attack movie. Both the villain and the final girl are top tier. I just remembered both Drop and this movie use Baby Shark as a plot point. Like, we've had so many iconic horror movie villains this year, but I think Jai Courtney's character in this movie deserves to be in a top 5 or top 10 list at least. It's such an unhinged and entertaining performance. Next is The Monkey. This shit was right up my alley. I loved the dark humor, and I loved the over-the-top, slapsticky, gory kills. It's very reminiscent of Final Destination, which is funny, because we got a new Final Destination this year as well. And I'll be talking about that soon, so it was definitely a case of like, wow, 2 cakes for me. And it wasn't just the physical humor with the death scenes that I loved, I also loved the dialogue and the signage humor. I'm always a sucker for that, and there's some great ones in here. There's some incredible dialogue that still cracks me up thinking about it. I really enjoyed the moments of dark comedy and long legs, and I like that this leaned more heavily into it. This is another one where the third act gets a bit iffy for me sometimes, but overall I love this movie. Final Destination Bloodlines is actually next. I like Final Destination 2 a lot, but I think this might actually be the best in the series. And this leans harder into the splat-stick comedy than ever before, which I think works wonderfully. The opening premonition scene is great. I love how big it is. I love how much of a spectacle it is. It made it really worth seeing the movie in IMAX. I like that the main characters are all family too. I thought that added not only more to the comedy and just the way they interact with each other, but also the stakes. It makes you get attached to some of these characters, and you get anxious when some of them are about to die. This also contains the final performance from the late great Tony Todd, and his final scene in this movie is genuinely emotional. This is kind of an aside, but the same weekend I saw this play with my friends in Vancouver. I don't remember the name. It was like Here We Go or Away We Go or something, but it was kind of this experimental play about aging and death, and one of the actors from the play was actually in the movie. He was the maitre d' in the restaurant in the opening scene. And it was very funny to me seeing the same guy in these 2 different productions, like kind of grappling with the inevitability of death. And one of them was this heavy experimental stage play, and in the other one he gets crushed by an elevator. Next is Together. If you know me, you know I am a body horror fan, and this didn't go as hard as I wished it would. It doesn't go as hard as The Substance, but to be fair, most movies don't go as hard as The Substance, so I don't know how much I can hold that against it. I wish it did go a bit more over the top, but at the same time, there's still like a couple scenes in this movie that really made me wince, especially the bathroom stall scene, if you know, you know. And I liked how it used the idea of 2 people like literally fusing together to explore like kind of codependency and commitment in long-term relationships. And I enjoyed Dave Franco and Alison Brie's performances too. I thought they had great chemistry, which added a lot to the movie, I think. And it's not a straight-up horror comedy like some of the other ones I've talked about, but it does make really good use of comic levity in a few scenes. Okay, and we're into the top 10 now. Next is Dead Talent Society. This was such an entertaining movie. It almost reminded me of a cross between Beetlejuice meets reality TV and social media, because it's about ghosts who need to haunt people so they don't fade away. I really enjoyed the humor here. It's a lot of silly, ghost-themed slapstick. And I really like the cast of characters too, and the camaraderie between them. It's one of those, like, a band of misfits have to come together and put on this big show when all these things go wrong, and how are they gonna pull it off? Are they gonna pull it off? And I just eat that shit up every time. The first half has that, like, very silly comedic tone, like the whole movie does, but especially that first half. And it got to a point where I was like, okay, it kind of feels like the story is starting to wrap up. I'm not really sure, like, where they can go from here. But then it keeps going, and it has, like, all these surprisingly really, like, heartfelt, emotional moments in the second half that really worked for me. Overall, just a really funny, entertaining, feel-good movie. I would definitely recommend it for people looking for a horror comedy. Next is Bugonia. This is another one of those movies that really grew on me the more I reflected on it after my initial viewing. I think this would make a really interesting double feature with Eddington, because I think they're both really interesting and accurate commentaries on modern society. Not to sound like the Joker, but particularly, like, especially post-lockdown, like, the sense of, alienation and loneliness, I think, that just, like, drives people into these online echo chambers where they just become further and further disconnected from reality and other people, and it just... In both of these movies, it leads to, like, pretty terrifying extremes. But it's not just about that. I think it's a very, like, multi-layered movie. It's less overt, but the ecological themes are really interesting too, like humanity's relationship with nature. And I like how much it keeps you guessing in regards to whether Emma Stone's character is really an alien or not. I feel like a lot of people will probably go into it already having a good idea, like it's Yorgos Lanthimos, like he puts some wild shit in his movies, but I think it really does a good job of making you doubt, like, both sides of this story. And I think that's bolstered by the two main performances by Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons. Jesse Plemons' performance in particular is something that's really stuck in my mind ever since I saw it. He doesn't just feel like a caricature of, like, a conspiracy nut, like, he's obviously a very deeply traumatized person, and even if I wasn't, like, rooting for him, I could, like, sympathize with him and to an extent understand why he's doing the shit that he does. Like, it feels very realistic to the point where it's kind of uncomfortable sometimes. And I think the dynamic between him and Emma Stone's character, and also him and his, I think it was his cousin that he ropes into his scheme as well, was very interesting in the way that they develop throughout the movie. This is another ending that really stuck in my mind too. Like, I won't spoil it obviously, but just the montage and the use of music and just like the kind of roller coaster of emotions I felt, it was great. Next is The Rule of Jenny Penn. I love the setting here. This is another nursing home horror movie, but no Pete Davidson this time, thankfully. I really liked the two main characters here too. John Lithgow in particular is just delightfully unhinged in this. He's sadistic, he's manipulative, he dances around like Grandpa Joe. I really hated his character, but at the same time he did entertain me at points. This movie is so uncomfortable at points too. If you're particularly sensitive to, like, elder abuse, I probably wouldn't recommend this. And I also like the element that the main character, played by Jeffrey Rush, he's this, like, old judge who has a stroke and ends up in the nursing home. And his stroke symptoms are kind of, like, getting worse throughout the movie, so there's also this race against the clock to try and stop this fucker before, like, you're not physically or mentally capable anymore, and I thought that element of the movie was really interesting too. Just a very well done, uncomfortable psychological horror with two killer lead performances. I love this movie, definitely check this one out. Next is The Long Walk, aka what every school Terry Fox run felt like to my fat ass. I have been reading Stephen King since I was 14, and I'm a big fan of this book, and I was very excited to finally see it get a big screen adaptation. And I think this is, like, damn near as good as it can be. I definitely have issues with it, but I feel like most of them come down to the budget, which can't really be helped. Like, I'm not one of those book purists. I think as long as it, like, the heart of the story is intact, I can deal with the changes, and that's definitely the case here. What I really love about both the book and the movie is that it takes this simple premise of this kind of teen dystopia setup where these kids just walk until they die, and the last one standing wins the prize, and uses it to do a lot with the characters. Practically the whole story is just the characters walking and talking, and it uses that to really develop these characters and their relationships to the point where even though you know everyone but one's gonna die, it's still so, like, shocking and emotionally upsetting when characters start dying. And it really does a lot with the horror, too. Like, every horrible, fucked up thing you can think of that could happen from just walking for a long time, you will see it happen here. And that is definitely bolstered by the cast here. Like, there is not a single weak link. I love David Johnson in Alien Romulus, and he is excellent here. I haven't seen Cooper Hoffman in much, but I really liked his performance as well. I also really enjoyed Mark Hamill as the Major. I've seen some criticism that the performance is too hammy, but one, it's Mark Hamill, and two, I think it fits the character. Like, it's definitely more, I don't know if cartoonish is the right word, but, like, it's more over the top than the other performances, which are more subdued, but he's like the military figurehead. He's like the drill sergeant type character who like shows up in his like boots and his glasses and makes these big speeches. Go out and get 'em, boys. Get those sacks off the ground. Bah, bah, bah. So it made sense for that character to be hammy. Even though these versions of Garrity and McFreeze are quite a bit different than the versions in the books, I still thought they worked for this version of the story. And as a book fan, I really liked how much of the dialogue from the original book was in the movie. It doesn't go as far as the book in some respects, but I loved how bleak and brutal this was. And it does a great job balancing that brutality and intensity with the slower emotional moments too. Next is Frankenstein. This is everything I would want or expect from a Guillermo del Toro adaptation of Frankenstein. This is just a beautiful looking movie all around. I was very fortunate to see it in 35mm, which really enhanced the viewing experience. The production design and the costumes and the props all look incredible, and I really liked how it handled like the cycle of trauma and daddy issues passed down from Victor's father to him and then Victor to the creature, and whether that cycle goes on or it gets broken. I thought that aspect of the movie was really good. It just added a really nice emotional heart to me. Like, the daddy issues were an element of the original story, it's just much more overt here. And as you would expect, the portion of the movie focusing on the creature and his side of the story is the highlight. It's my favorite part of the movie. I think it's everybody's favorite part of the movie. I'd seen Jacob Elordi in a handful of things, like Priscilla and Saltburn, and I didn't mind his performances. They didn't really stand out to me, but he is so great as the creature here. Like, not only, you know, just like the height thing, the physicality, but just like the emotion and the humanity that he brings to the role. I love the part where he's like hiding out at the old man's like barn or whatever, and he's just like chilling with the rats. So cute. There's so many Disney princess moments with the creature. I loved it. And it was really nice seeing like a more of a classic period piece monster movie on the big screen again. I think I mentioned the same thing about Nosferatu in last year's ranking video. More of these, please. Next is The Ugly Stepsister. If you know anything about my taste in movies, you'll know there's so many things in this movie that are just my jam. I love like dark subversive fairy tales, I love body horror, I love freaky shit. And this is a great example of that. It's basically like a fucked up retelling of Cinderella, except from the perspective of the ugly stepsister, and this movie draws a lot of comparisons to The Substance because they both use body horror to explore themes of like female body image issues and beauty standards and like the lengths people will go to fit those standards. There's a particular scene involving like something being done to her eyelid that like made me squirm. Stuff with eyes always freaks me out. Eyes and teeth. I also liked how it explores how like women are pitted against each other in these scenarios. Although the story is told from the perspective of the ugly stepsister, I at first I thought they were gonna like villainize the Cinderella character, but to my surprise they didn't. And I like how the movie acknowledges that it's just like a shitty situation for everyone involved. I love the way this movie looks too. It just has this very like old school dreamy quality to it, which really enhances the fucked up fairy tale vibe. Next is Weapons. I was a pretty big fan of Zach Krager's previous horror film, Barbarian. And for me personally, Barbarian is more scary on a visceral level, but Weapons is just such a better made movie. The initial setup of all these kids just randomly going missing is very intriguing, the whole mystery. I really like the way the story was told with all these different character point of views and how it gradually reveals more of what's going on. And the point of view switches give more depth to the characters too. Like, it starts off with the teacher's point of view and how she's dealing with the emotional aftermath of this and being targeted and treated as like a point of suspicion by the town. And from her point of view, like, we see Josh Brolin's character and he's just like this brutish bully, and then it switches to his point of view and you see like how deeply he's like mourning his missing son and feeling powerless in the situation and taking it out on other people. It's such a well-written and directed movie. It does a really good job managing the suspense and the mystery with these moments of comic levity without leaning too far into it. And there's some really cool creative camera work here, especially during like some of these chase scenes. Like you get, sometimes the camera is attached to like a door opening and closing, and the way the camera tracks on a character that's chasing or being chased. Another absolutely iconic villain too. I love how they gradually reveal them in little glimpses throughout the movie, and then it's another thing that kind of straddles the line between being like kind of campy and silly, but also off-putting. Another Stephen King reference, but it felt a bit like Pennywise to me in a way. It also has one of my favorite fucking endings I've seen to a movie in a long time. I never get tired of it. It's one of those things where you can see the Whitest Kids, you know, influence, because it just has this unhinged sketch comedy energy to it. And it's such a catharsis after how grim and intense that last section of the movie is. So yeah, this is one of those movies that really blew the fuck up this year, and I think it's worth the hype. Next, Bring Her Back. Out of all the movies on this list, this is the one that probably left me feeling most on edge and uncomfortable, especially the first time I was watching it and I didn't know where the story was going. And I rewatched it again recently. It actually got better because you notice all like the details and the foreshadowing, and you understand the character motivations better. I feel like horror movies about grief are so played out at this point, but then you get something like this that's just so well made and hits so hard. This movie has another very memorable villain played wonderfully by Sally Hawkins. It's one of those characters where like I hated her ass like 99% of the movie just because of like the extent of like the gaslighting and the manipulation and the shit she was pulling on these kids, but then at the very end it actually made me feel bad for her. And speaking of the kids, I really liked the relationship between like the two main characters, the step-siblings here. I thought it was very sweet and it really made me root for them. Not to mention the incredible work being done by like the younger cast members here. Not just the two main cast members, but also like the freaky possessed kid. I love the parts where he was going like hungry caterpillar on everyone and everything in this household. Definitely some of the nastier bits of the movie. Next is Sinners. Now this movie was a phenomenon, and I'm not sure what I can say about it that hasn't already been said, but this is a fucking banger. The story is a really interesting combination of like a period piece drama that eventually turns into like a vampire invasion. And I love how much time it takes in the first half to introduce you to all these different characters and their histories and their relationships. The world of this movie just feels so real and lived in. And another movie that's just full of incredible performances. I can't name a single weak link. You got twins played by Michael B. Jordan, who does so much to like make these feel like two completely different people. I love the introductory scene where they're like smoking a cigarette and passing it back and forth to each other. It felt like they really wanted to flex like how cool this effect was, and they're right, it's cool. The music is a big part of this movie, and both the musical performances and the actual score are incredible. Every time I watch the movie, I have to just listen to it on repeat. There's one in particular that literally everyone talks about. I won't talk about it in too much detail in case, like, there's, I don't know, maybe someone who recently escaped from, like, a nuclear apocalypse bunker who hasn't seen or heard of this movie yet. But just, like, the song itself and the visuals and how it, I wouldn't call it fantasy realism necessarily, because, like, there are supernatural elements to this movie, there's fucking vampires, but, like, the way it kind of fucks with time, explores like kind of the whole history of blues music in this one like really cool musical number. It was just mind-blowing. Just one of those scenes that I think is going to be talked about and remembered for a long time. And I feel like I've talked about everything except the vampires so far, but the vampire shit in this movie is great. Another very charismatic and memorable villain here. And I like how the vampires are kind of a hive mind and how it uses that as an allegory for assimilation. And also another all-timer, like, musical scene. Like, you can't go wrong with a bunch of vampires performing Irish folk music. And I love the way they look, too. Like, the way their eyes glow, I thought was a really neat effect. It almost reminded me a bit of that, like, Salem's Lot TV movie. Just an incredible movie. I've seen it 3 times at this point, and every time I do, I find something more to appreciate about it. And the final movie on our ranking. Again, disclaimer, this list is very vibes-based, and it's hard for me to pick favorites, especially when this year has been so stacked. But if you, like, held me at gunpoint and asked me to pick my favorite horror movie of 2025, I would have to say either Sinners or the final movie, 28 Years Later. I know this movie is kind of divisive in certain circles, but as a big fan of 28 Days Later, I went in with big expectations, and for me, it exceeded them. This feels like the antithesis of the Legacy sequel slop. This feels like a genuine continuation and expansion of the world and the concepts in the original 28 Days Later movie. First off, on an audio-visual level, like, right up there with Sinners, this was like one of my favorite theater experiences of the year. I love Danny Boyle's direction here. It's so, like, maximalist and kinetic. The post-apocalyptic world here feels so rhymy and lived in. In the first half of the movie, the boots montage and the causeway chase scene were incredible. Also, I was bummed that John Murphy wasn't coming back to do the score initially, because I feel like that's such, like, an iconic part of the original film, but I love the soundtrack here. It's from a group called Young Fathers. I haven't heard of them before this movie, but this is another soundtrack I've been listening to on repeat ever since I saw the movie, and it makes me want to listen to more of their music outside of this soundtrack. It's so eclectic and memorable, and I particularly love how they sample and use, like, other bits of audio and music, like, again, like the Boots remix that's become very iconic, and, like, the classical music that's used during the causeway scene. And I like the different kinds of zombies here too, like you got the gross goopy ones that are kind of crawling around on the ground eating worms. Then you got these jacked up alphas and they're like ripping people's heads off with their bare hands and these like 10-inch wieners swinging around. I just really liked how they handled the zombies here. They're almost like wild animals at this point. And I love the night vision scenes of the zombies hunting too, and the bits of the zombies just like existing in nature. I thought that was really interesting. And it kind of makes me wonder where they're gonna go with it in the sequels. But in addition to like the audiovisual stuff and the zombie stuff, I really loved the coming of age story at the center of this too, and I thought it was surprisingly well done and emotionally resonant. But the whole subplot with the kid's journey with his mother and Ray Fiennes' Dr. Kelson character, that was the thing that got me to go from like, alright, this is a cool ass zombie movie to this is really something special. And I love the whole misdirect with Dr. Kelson and the Bone Temple. Especially with all like the posters and the marketing for this movie featuring the skulls, you think it's going to be something really sinister. But it all led up to this really unexpected emotional climax for me. And that's the thing that really stuck out to me, is just the human element. I think part of the reason why this was kind of divisive is that a lot of people just went into it expecting a standard zombie movie, and it definitely wasn't, and that's the reason why I love it. And never in a million years could I predict what the final 2 minutes of this movie would contain. It felt like some Mad Max type of shit, and I'm really excited to see where all the loose ends go in the sequel. As of recording this video, the Bone Temple is out, but I have not seen it yet. I will definitely have seen it by the time this video is edited and posted. Maybe I'll make a community tab post after I see it or something. So that is my 2025 horror movie ranking. Thank you so much for watching. Which of these movies have you seen? What did you think of them? Do you agree or disagree with some of my takes? Feel free to like and subscribe if you're so inclined, or dislike, I don't really give a fuck. You are a free person. And here is looking forward to more excellent movies in 2026. This has been Discomfort Films. Goodbye.